marauding pirates after the attack by Barbarossa. At its height, it housed over 10,000 British soldiers, all their families, and all those people from the surrounding area during an attack, and a huge long siege of 6 months by the French under the Duc de Richelieu. So here on the right hand side we've got the Bay of Fornells, the second largest anchorage on Menorca, but of absolutely no use whatsoever commercially. Because whereas the average depth of the harbour of Mahon is some 80 feet and in places is over 140 feet in depth, here the average depth is just about 10 feet. There's many places where you can walk from one side to the other of this huge bay if you know where to put your feet without getting headwind. Became very famous some 200 years ago, putting on the map of Spain the third most classical dish, and that is the Coutadella de langostas. You've all heard of the paella, I'm sure, from the area of Valencia. Some of you may have been lucky enough to have heard and tasted the speciality of Segovia, just north of Madrid, which is roast-settling pig and lamb. Here it is the lobster casserole. But that is not quite true, because langostas are not lobsters. They're very similar. It's a warm water crayfish, and under protection in the Mediterranean. Only so many tons are allowed to be fished, of a certain size and over, between May and August every year. And they're larger than a lobster. So they become a very, very expensive commodity, and I think a very overrated dish. But anywhere around the coast of Spain you will find the Coutadella de langostas now, and especially where it started here in this little fishing village of Fornells. A village with some 200 people living here during the winter time. During the summertime, some 2,000, as those people just out of Coutadella come down to their second homes here near the sea. Pizzas, a type of paella which is quite popular. But if you want a plato combinado, which is, for instance, egg and chips, sausage and chips, anything with chips, or if you don't want chips, salad, then the two hostels are the best. And the best of those two hostels is literally, I think it's open on a Monday today, usually is, Bar Palma, which is there with a green awning directly in front of us. The one which is Salgaret, I've always found very good, but last week I did get an impression from some of the customers that the service was very indifferent. But it's entirely up to you. I'm not going to tell you where to go. There's plenty of choice. The only thing is that we're going to be leaving here at 2:15. So wherever you go, please tell them when you walk in that you have a coach to catch. And especially if you go into one of the restaurants where the service will be slower, and although very good, they're very good at coming with the menu, opening the bottle of wine, usually with a flourish, and serving the food. But have you ever tried paying a bill in Spain? When you have, it takes ages sometimes. You've asked 3 times and it's still not coming. You get very frustrated, and the quickest way to pay a bill, as I've done so many times throughout Spain, is to get up and walk away. You've never paid one in as fast in all your life. Those restaurants, if you're eating there, of course the toilet facilities are available. Those 2 hostels, even if you're not eating there, they will be only too pleased to let you use them. So have a very She said that last Saturday there were many more Spanish flights coming in from various airports in Spain than there were British. So unusual. It's never happened like that before. these sailing schools down here. It was about almost 30 years ago that these hostels down in Fornells actually started these schools of windsurfing, sailing, scuba diving, canoeing, anything to do with the sea. And that industry totally decimated last year. Because being a family-orientated island, being predominantly British, from the beginning of the season right through to the end, we would always get many British families with their school-aged children and teenagers here actually having a week's course or a fortnight's course in sailing. When that law came in which says you can't take children out of school during term time last year, well, it suddenly meant that we were completely lacking in youngsters until the middle of July and August. Whereas all of our coaches would have almost 50% youngsters on board, 50% parents. Now we get, as you see today, the full mix of evergreen trees we have on the island. All around us, the Mediterranean pine trees. And equal in number and in grades on their own in places are the holm oak, the evergreen oak, or you may call them the holly oak. Those dark green foliaged ones. You've got a Mediterranean tree heather which grows up to about 8 feet in height and flowers in the autumn amongst all the other thousands of heathers along the northern side. You've got a wild holly and ilex. It's not prickly, it's got the same shaped leaf, it's a bit soft and bendy, but it does have berries on during the winter time. And we've got myrtle everywhere. You'll see myrtle right across the island, and those are the short scrubby plants with a slightly brighter green leaf and with the red berries which gradually turn black. These are used in Cyprus a lot. The berries are used in sausages, and the little branches of the myrtle used for barbecuing because they give the smoke, and therefore the flavour of the meat is slightly different from the myrtle than it would be, as they do here, use the wild olive trees. Up on our left hand side on the hilltop, painted that red colour, used to be a British officer's home from the 18th century, belongs to that family. And as far as the eye can see, from there, the land belongs to the Sarah family. I'm bound to be asked by the end of the day, and I might as well sort of answer that question now. What are the plastic bags for in the trees? Arriving on mainland Spain some 40 odd years ago, on a consignment of live eucalyptus trees from Australia, was the bag moth. Gradually it worked its way along the Costa del Sol, hopped across to Ibiza from Denia, then arrived here some probably 30 years ago. The bag moth is no problem whatsoever, but during the winter a cocoon will form in these trees, and in the springtime thousands of what we call the processionario caterpillar will fall down, form a procession, march between trees and strip them bare very quickly, and therefore killing them. So at this time of the year, in September, October, perhaps the last week in August, those bag moths are flying. So the Forestry Commission put these bags in the trees with a little wooden box on top. The hormone of the female moth goes into the bag, and the male moth flies in and gets a little bit more, a bit less than he bargained for. It stops the reproduction cycle. Now we've just about eliminated them here on Menorca, but every second year these forested areas are sprayed from the air with a special pesticide which was formulated by ICI at Middlesbrough about 18 years ago, especially for Menorca. It actually adheres to the pine needles, and the trunks and the branches of the trees doesn't disappear or dissipate down into the underground water supply. Having done those, in recent years, those excursions up through the Sierra Nevada mountains, the Alpujarra mountains, you get to a certain altitude there and you find there's huge drifts of the pine trees stripped bare. They don't seem to be doing anything about it. You see these huge cocoons. Well, we don't see too many of them now, just occasionally. But the Forestry Commission is doing it very scientifically in some respects, because every one of these boxes has a little number on it. And they've got a map, and they show on the map where every box was actually positioned. The end of the season, they'll take the boxes down, count the number of moths in there, then they know where the largest amount of these bag moths in fact exist. Going to concentrate on that area. Everywhere you look, especially on the southern side, but right around the island really, are the tiny little stunted wild olive trees. They're growing out of every nook and cranny in the rock. And they're very long-lived trees. In fact, they say some 2,000 years will a wild olive tree live. And so the people of Menorca think themselves very similar to the wild olive tree. The Menorcans are very long-lived people. And it's very unusual to see an obituary under the age of sort of the 90s, middle 90s. They're always very tiny people. I mentioned in Theatre Day, you're just between 4'10" and 5'1", although in recent years this present generation seemed to have grown by another 6 inches, but, well, every generation of every country seemed to get bigger every time. That's... And being so famous, this guy, who used to go out on his bike 5 miles every day, will be visited by all the prime ministers of Spain, because this, during August, is a favourite haunt of the